Hello and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Diane Okonski, President of the Icelandic National League of the United States, and I'm so happy you're able to join us today. This is always a really interesting program. Before we get started, I just have a couple of standard reminders. The program is being recorded and will be available on the INLUS website in just a few days, and that's inlus.org. Secondly, as attendees to the program, you are on mute. However, don't let that stop you from asking questions. We will answer as many as we can throughout the program. To ask a question, use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a phone or a tablet, that Q&A button may be in the upper left-hand corner or right-hand corner, or you may have to swipe to find it, but don't let that stop you. I expect that there's going to be quite a few questions today, so please get them in early. Now let me introduce today's guest. Jóhannes Þór Skúlason is the Managing Director of the Icelandic Travel Industry Association and has held that position since 2018. Jóhannes, welcome. It's always so nice to have you here and talking about traveling to Iceland. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure to speak to you in this and giving a little bit back to the community in the US.
Well, it seems like Iceland is still the place to go in the world. Travel has not, tourism has not stopped or slowed down at all. And as I understand it, the tourism industry is approaching pre-pandemic levels. So can you tell us a little bit about what tourism looks like for this year?
Yeah, we've been quite lucky. It seems that we are bouncing back with more speed that we hoped for. We were not as badly hit as many other countries during the COVID years, because, well, in the way that we didn't have these very long full lockdowns. People could still go to restaurants and cafes for most of the time. We had 2 or 3 4 to 6 week periods where everybody was locked in, but for the most part the government used ways more in the way of limiting the numbers of people that could be in any one place. So the cafes and restaurants went down to 10 or 20 people at a time. So there were restrictions, but less of full lockouts than many other countries in Europe saw, or you in the US. So, but tourism was quite hard hit, of course, even because of even in spite of that. So. But because of some good help that we got from the government, as many in many other countries, and kind of the resilience of the people and companies in tourism, we've been seeing a very quick bounce back. And last year we had in 2022 we had 1.7 million tourists come to Iceland, which is only like 300,000 less than we had in 2019. So we are quite happy that we've bounced back quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So what is the status of COVID? Everybody, last year, nearly everyone I know who went to Iceland came back as a parting gift with COVID.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering what it looks like these days.
It actually looks quite good these days. All of the emergencies have been lifted, even from the National Hospital. I just looked at the numbers earlier this morning to prepare a little bit, and they've actually stopped updating the kind of national website that they set up, covid.is. They stopped updating that in March, because they now look at it that COVID is now just a part of the kind of background in society, just like any other cold or something like that. So we have a huge proportion of the population vaccinated, and I think around 55% of the population has already had COVID. So we're in quite a good situation with that. And according to the numbers, before they stopped updating, I think it was on March 23rd, in the last 14 days before that, so in the first part and first half of March, there were only 18 people who had gotten COVID in those 2 weeks. And it's been, looking back at the kind of the 2 or 3 months before that, it was like 5 to 6, from 2 to 5 to 6, 8 people a day. So it's very much reduced from what it used to be.
Well, that's very nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
With all those travelers coming to visit, what are the accommodations like? Are there enough hotel rooms and rental cars and things like that so we won't have any problems getting a rental car?
I would recommend that if you are coming to Iceland, that you look into accommodation and rental cars with a few months in. We had problems last summer during the high season with the rental car agencies scrambling to import more cars so they could serve the tourists coming in. We had accommodation sold out in certain parts of the country, in the east and the northeast, especially where we have less capacity than in the south and the southwest. And so I would recommend that people look into this with some good time before them. 3 to 6 months would be good. We're not. If you're planning on coming this summer, I would start looking at accommodation right now. If you haven't looked at it, it doesn't mean that everything will sell out, but it means that there are certain areas in the country, especially in the east and the northeast, that will where you will have less choice the further you get to the summer, and it will be quite impossible to book anything that you would of the quality that you would like, with 2 or 3 weeks before. So especially if you're coming in July or August, May, September would look a lot better this way. But in later part of June, July and August will be quite it will be quite full.
Okay. All right. I know that Iceland is really moving into the electric car for rentals. Can you tell us a little bit about that and availability of charging stations and things?
We are working. This is one of the things that we're working on with the government at the association, how to get Iceland ready for the revolution over to electric car rentals. So, but as it happens, I think we are still at just like around 15 to 20% of the rental car fleet in the country being full electric or part electric hybrid. And if you want to hire an electric car, you can, and you can travel around the whole country with an electric car, but you will have to plan a little bit where you stop to charge. It's not a certain thing to find accommodation where you can charge your car overnight. So you might have to rely in some parts of the country on fast charge stations. So you would have to look at where they are situated. You can see it on apps like PlugShare or the Icelandic apps for charging stations, which I could share with you if you'd like later on at the end. So you can do it. I've done it myself. I have an electric car and I drive the whole circle every year. So I've gone to the Westfjords and everything. It's not a problem because there are still so few rental cars on electric in the country, but you might have to wait perhaps at a fast charging station for 40 minutes, for an hour to get, in there. But then again, I usually haven't had to wait at all. But again, if you're traveling over the high season, you might have to wait a bit and plan your vacation accordingly. So but we still have a lot of diesel and petrol cars. Most of them, like 85% of them, are still running on diesel and electric. And I think for the next 5 to 8 years, I think we have a situation where at least half will still be running on petrol and diesel. But we're trying. We're getting there.
Yeah. Marvelous, marvelous. Well, we've had a question come in regarding COVID. Does Iceland require proof of COVID vaccinations upon entry to the country, or are there any other issues arriving tourists should be prepared for?
No, we don't require proof of vaccinations. Right now we are just open to everyone who wants to come here, just with the regular visa requirements. I actually can't remember what the visa requirements are for US tourists, but I think they're quite easy. It's the what you have to look for if you're coming here next year, or perhaps from November. We will be seeing some changes to the European Schengen area system, border system, called ETIAS and EES, and those two stand for the EES stands for entry-exit system, which will be taken or should be up and working in November for the whole of the Schengen area, which Iceland is a part of. It means that you enter into the Schengen area, which is the border area for the whole of Europe. So if you enter into Iceland, you don't have to show a passport or anything when you can't go to the mainland. That means that the EES system, the entry-exit system, is supposed to be online in November, and that means that you don't necessarily see a border guard when you are entering the country. It will be automated. It will be your passport will be scanned, and you will have to put your fingerprints on file, but then you're let into the country. It speeds things up, so it shouldn't be any problem for anyone, but it's just good to know that you will have to give your fingerprints when you arrive, which is new for Iceland. You haven't had to do that before, I think. And that's for everyone, not just US tourists. It's for everyone outside Europe. But then in 2024, if you're thinking of coming next year, then the second part of this system should be online from, I think, January or February, which is called ETIAS, which is similar to the US ESTA system, which you are probably familiar with, where you have to go online and submit an application and pay a small fee to get. You're essentially just registering as a tourist for a short-time visa. It doesn't come instead of a passport. You still have to bring your passport, but everyone has to fill out that ETIAS form online, pay a small fee, and 98% of the application should be automatically approved. It's a similar system to ESTA in the US.
All right, and I just want to make sure people understand the timing. So the entry-exit system, EES, will come into play in
November,
November-ish, the end of
November-ish, probably. But
Okay.
the problem with that has been that it was supposed to be online in May, but the border stations around Europe weren't equipped. So it's been pushed back to November, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back again until the beginning of 2024 with the ETIAS system. So with that system, EES, entry-exit, you don't have to fill anything out. You just arrive. The only change is that you don't see a border guard who stamps your passport. It's just electronically scanned, and you give your fingerprints. Then in the beginning of the year 2024, you should have the ETIAS system online, where you have to go online to a certain web page and fill out an application to enter the Schengen area.
And it's probably best to do that a few days before your departure, not the day of.
I think you give it a week.
All right. And it's my understanding that ETIAS was supposed to go into effect 1 or 2 years ago, but has been delayed due to COVID.
Yeah, it has.
Okay, all right. Well, speaking of entry and exit, there's been a lot of talk about and a lot of news reports about charging access fees for various sites to help promote safety and infrastructure improvements and things like that.
Yeah.
Are there certain sites we should be prepared for that are starting to charge those fees?
There are not many places around the country with the kind of the larger tourist attractions that have any admission fees. They are mostly owned by the government, and the government hasn't started charging any specific fees for entry to these places. What you might find is at you have to pay to park your car at national parks and certain other attractions. Kirkjufell in the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, for example, the geothermal area in Mývatn in the northeast. There is an area there that you have to pay for car parking, and they're not exactly admission fees, but the car park is pretty much the only car park available at these spots, so you have to kind of pay those, and the fees are usually about $7 to $8 when you park there. And it's usually just a one-time thing. You park, and if you stay 15 minutes or 2 hours, you pay the same $8. So you might encounter those in national parks and in certain attractions or natural attractions around the country. There's not very many, but they are starting to catch on, the landowners, the private landowners, that they can actually do this, and we saw it increase very much with the awareness of this. We saw that increase with the volcano outbreaks in the Reykjanes Peninsula now 2 years and 3 years ago, where the landowners there around the volcano, so just a steady stream of people coming in, they had to park their cars somewhere, so they went and made a very rudimentary car park, and started charging fees and put up some portable toilets and stuff. So in the places that you have to pay for admission, it's usually like that. It's for the car park, for the use of toilets and other amenities. But it is going to change. We probably will see some admission fees put on in the next 2 or 3, 5 years. But we're not certain where, and we're not certain how. So that's something that we still have to hash out with the government.
Wouldn't it be easier just to tack on an administrative fee or a visitor's fee to the to our airfare, or as part of the booking process?
That's one of the things that has been discussed, actually, and because we're a part of the European Economic Area. Not the European Union, but we have an agreement with the European Union that makes us part of the Schengen, makes us part of that. There's a little bit more difficult for us because we can't set up a fee, that the government can't set up a fee that just targets foreign tourists. It means that Icelanders coming back from their holiday abroad, they would have to pay that fee as well. And so it's a little bit of a political issue as well, how this is done. But yes, there have been some ideas on doing it like that just tacking it on the airfare or something like this. But at the association, we tend to say that, well, that could be a good idea, but we still believe that it wouldn't change the ideas of the private landowners to try to get fees from their land use, and it wouldn't change the government's stance on the national parks having to make their own revenue, at least for part. So we would still have these kind of ticket stations around the country, even if we had that kind of universal airfare tack on. But it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means we have to kind of look at the whole thing.
Mhm.
And one of the problems that we're looking at is when you get put on a tax like that, it just goes into the government coffers, and we're not quite sure that we would get all of it into tourism and the natural attractions. So we'll have to make sure of that too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I know that, the Golden Circle tour, those sites are just incredibly crowded during the summer.
Yeah.
Are there other sites that you would recommend us going to see that are less visited and maybe more available, and we can have a better, quieter
Yeah, definitely. There are some. It depends, of course, on what you're looking for and how much time you have. Tourists from the US tend to stay for a shorter period of time than many from the European side of the Atlantic. That's probably because you guys perhaps have less summer leave. You have fewer days that you want to use for different things. But people from the US have been lengthening their stay during since COVID. We're seeing a change in that, going from maybe 5 days to 6 to 7 days, even 8 days. I would recommend when you come here that you at least take a week, because if you do a week here, you get those extra 2 or 3 days that make it possible for you to go a little bit further from the capital. If you're just coming for a few days, I definitely would recommend, do the Golden Circle, do these things. But like, there are places especially if you go north and west instead of over the south coast, there are places like Húsafell, like the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. Even if you can go west to the West Fjords, if you have the time and the car. And there are some beautiful places. They are very much less traveled. There's a lot less tourists there than in the Golden Circle in the southwest and along the south coast. They don't have the let's say as well advertised places, but it's like the different of, when you go to France, everybody thinks, well, I'll have to go to Paris, I'll have to see the Eiffel Tower. So the Golden Circle is a little bit like that for Iceland. You go to Iceland, you want to see the Golden Circle, you want to see the Glacier Lagoon. They're in the south coast and in the southwest. But in France, you've got like cities like Lyon, you've got areas like the Bordeaux for wines, you've got the Riviera. And it's the same with Iceland. You can go to different parts of the country. One of the things that you could do is that you could come to Iceland, take a 4 or 5 day drive in what we call the Arctic Coastway, which is the small, quiet roads that are around the edges of the northern coast. And it's something like 500 kilometers. It's a bit like the Scotland 500 in that sense. There's a lot of small towns. There's islands to see. There's horrible roads, and which is well, I exaggerate. There's only one truly horrible road on the way, and it's just on the start on the western side. But the rest of the roads are actually okay, but they are a little bit smaller than you might be used to. But it's a beautiful coastline. So that's one of the things that you could do. You could fly to Keflavik, take a day, go to do the Golden Circle or not, and just drive north to Hvammstangi, and then take those crinkly edges to Akureyri, and then on all the way to Thorshöfn. And then you can do a quick round the south coast back. So you get the whole circle, but you spend most of your time in the north. Or you could just skip that south coast and just go back again on the main ring road, which gives you a whole different thing. So there's a lot of things that you can do like that. The West Fjords is one. This Arctic Coastway is another. You can do another one called the Diamond Circle, which is in the northeast, where you get the I don't know if you've seen the movie Prometheus. Came out a few years ago. It was like a prequel to the Alien franchise. It starts with an alien man standing on a kind of a huge waterfall, and and that's Dettifoss in the northeast. You can check it out on YouTube if you like the start of the movie Prometheus, and it's if you haven't seen it, it's so that's one. It's the largest waterfall in Europe. It's not the tallest, but it's got the most water in it of all the waterfalls in Europe. So it's absolutely majestic. You've got 2 or 3 others. You've got Miva and the geothermal areas there. You've got a blue lagoon. That's not the Blue Lagoon, but the same silica infused water, the same blue color, but a lot less tourists than the Blue Lagoon has. So there's a lot of things like that which I would recommend you check out. And you can actually check out all these places at websites of the kind of regional destination management offices, which are usually called North Iceland or Visit South Iceland. You can see them all at the Visit Iceland website, where they have links to all of those. And if you go into the regions, they have a little bit more about the places in each. And I would recommend, if you have the time, to extend your stay from 5 days to 7 or 8 days. It will completely change the possibilities of going to places where you won't encounter as many people as in the south and the southwest.
Wonderful. I still have a hope to get to the West Fjords one day, and I'm sure going to all of these small towns and driving along those roads, you have a much better chance of getting the true Icelandic flavor of the country and the hospitality rather than the kind of the urbanization of Reykjavik in that area.
Yeah, it's a little bit a different feel from. I'll put some links in the chat if that's okay.
That would be marvelous. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, just keep going. I'll just find the links while we're at it.
So when is the best time to visit Iceland?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for, actually. If you want to see the Northern Lights, then it's October, November, February. If you want to go for, let's say, you want to visit a glacial cave, it's October. If you want to get the kind of the full experience of the Icelandic summer, which is a little bit different than summer in most parts of the world that I've been in, at least, it's you can come anywhere from June to middle of September.
Oh no, I hope we haven't lost him. I hope this is just a blip.
You get different things. Oops, do you hear me?
You froze up for a few minutes.
Oh, okay. I hope it'll stay okay. Yeah, I was saying, just Iceland is a little bit. Do you want to come in summer or do you want to come in winter? What are you looking for? If you're looking for a winter drive of seeing Northern Lights, going up on a glacier on a snowmobile, all those winter adventures. I would recommend sometime October, November, or March, February, March, even January. But be advised, though, that January, February is the time of year that we have bad weather here. Your chances of being snowed in somewhere are a lot higher in January, February than any other time of the year. So if you're looking at Northern Lights, I would say maybe October, November is your better bet. But if you are just comfortable with maybe hitting a a storm for a day or a day and a half, then January and February is your friend. And Iceland is fun either way. There's always something to do. Just follow the weather and be sure what you're doing. But if I was recommending a time for people to come, I would say sometime during summer for your first visit. It doesn't have to be July or August, but like the start of June is quite a good time. There's a little bit fewer tourists. The season has been moving a little bit from it really starts in the middle of May, but usually the first part of the later half of May and the first part of June are usually a little bit quieter than the complete high season, which starts in the middle of June and stays until the middle of and end of September. So it's more July, August, September that's our high season now, with like tourists everywhere in the south or southwest at least. But if you come during the summer, even if it's during high season, you can always find, if you're driving like on the ring road, and this is the beautiful part about Iceland, which you could look at even just at the map before you come here. There's always places that, even if you are very close to big tourism places, you can always find, just if you turn out of the ring road and just drive for like 15 or 20 minutes up some small countryside road, you can always find peace and quiet and just nobody else than you, just in the nice weather to have a blanket and picnic, just with being alone in nature. You can always find that wherever you are in Iceland. You can even find it in Þingvellir itself, even when it's packed with cruise tourists in buses. You can go just a little bit out of the parking lot and out of the place where everybody is, just like drive for 5 or 7 minutes into the Þingvellir area, and you can be completely alone in Þingvellir.
Wonderful. It's nice to know that there are still places like that available.
Yeah.
So we've got a question about what is there to see in the east and northeast. Many of us have family connection to those parts of the country.
I would recommend that you go to, there's a lot of, let's just talk about this a little bit before. I'll share some links then. The Arctic Coastway that I was talking about, all that, the crinkly bits and the, driving the fjords in the north, that's one of the things. I highly recommend that. There's the Diamond Circle that I was talking about. That's in the northeast part. That has, for example, Húsavík, which some of you perhaps know if you've seen the Will Ferrell Eurovision movie. Beautiful town, and the Icelandic hub for whale watching. If you'd like to go whale watching, that's the place to go. You can do it in Reykjavik also, but it's a little bit different experience to go from Húsavík, where they have, for instance, old oak boats that you go out on. You can even go on an electric ship. To completely quiet to look at. So whale watching central, that's Húsavík. Just an hour from Húsavík, you have Mývatn, which is one of the most beautiful areas in Iceland. And here in Iceland, there's a kind of this debate on whether Mývatn is more beautiful during the summertime or during the wintertime when it's covered with snow and usually quite more freezing than here in the southwest. I think it's more beautiful in winter. Actually, it's an enchanting place. You can see huge and very special lava formations there, where you can go into, called Dimmuborgir, dark cities, where you can walk around like these huge lava formations. Quite an extraordinary place, and then you have both this geothermal area that I was talking about earlier, and the other blue lagoon, which is called the Jarðböðin at Mývatn. So there's a lot of things there. That's just the north and the northeast. In the east, there's I don't know if you've heard of Stöðlagil, which is I'm not sure how to translate that. I'll just I'll share a link and you can look at it. It's called Stöðlagil Canyon, and I'll just find a quick picture. Beautiful place, a little bit hard to come to, not that much, but let's see. Here we are. Oh, that was a small one. Sorry. It's got these rock formations that are like I don't know how to describe it, like the staples of in a church or something. There's a link in the webinar in the webinar chat to a picture of it. Yeah, basalt columns. That's the one. Thank you. Thanks, Doug. And it's a very beautiful place. It's growing as a tourism attraction, but there's still not as many people as anywhere in the south, in the Glacier Lagoon or anywhere like that. And then in the fjords in the east, in the eastern fjords, there's a lot of there are a few beautiful towns, very local experiences you can get there, and so it's I highly recommend going to the north and the northeast and east as just the highlights of your trip, because you get a kind of a different view on Iceland than you get in the south and the southwest.
Thank you. Many of us, our families came from places like Vopnafjörður and areas like that. So some of us have been there, but I've been to Húsavík. It is an absolutely beautiful town, just a gorgeous place. But when I first started coming to Iceland, it seemed like as soon as the high season was open, many of the museums and restaurants, especially outside of Reykjavik, really reduced their hours or their days of operation. Mm-hmm. Is that still something that's going on, or has that with the more evenly distributed travel, does that are people open more often now?
It's getting a little better, but if you go, the problem is that many of the, when you go outside the capital, especially if you go far outside the capital, in the West Fjords, in the East Fjords, the companies will be relying on somewhat on people from schools, from universities, from the local schools even. So when they lose that staff, then they just think, well, okay, I'll stay open until maybe middle of September, and then I'll just close down. Many of these companies in these areas are run by people who have been in the business for a long time. They don't need to keep open for the whole year, so they don't, and they go to Tenerife or Spain or Italy in November, and so have their own vacation because they are working all summer. So we have this joke that half of Icelandic tourism goes on vacation to Tenerife in October, and the other half to Italy in November. So there's you will still account to that, but I would recommend that if you are coming kind of what we can call out of season, out of the high season, you will encounter some of that, especially after the end of September or before the beginning of May. So I would recommend that you check if you are looking to go somewhere, outside of the south coast and the southwest area, and then maybe west. If you're looking to go somewhere else, then yeah, that and Akureyri in the north, in the rural areas, check the opening times of the restaurants and hotels where you are planning to stay. It will probably mostly be open, but there might be something that you would like to visit, or the restaurants might have a reduced opening time or something, things like that.
All right, thank you. For those of you who are looking for the links that Jóhannes has been talking about, we will put them on the INLUS webinars webinar notes page, so that you can look at them and find out all these great places that he's been talking about. So please don't wait for to ask your questions. Please get your questions in now, as we are getting ready to wind up our program today. So Jóhannes, what haven't we asked? What questions haven't I asked you that we need to know about?
Well, you've done a pretty thorough job, Diane. It's it's been good. I think maybe the question many people are asking is, how many tourists are there going to be in Iceland this summer or this year? Is it going to be completely packed? Is there over tourism in Iceland? Do we have a big problem with that? I still say that we don't have an over tourism problem in Iceland, but we do have overcrowding issues at certain places at certain times. You might do the Golden Circle on a bus around 2 o'clock, 11 to 4 in the be at Þingvellir at 2 o'clock with the car park packed with buses. But then you might be there at, sometime after 4 and you're the only one there. So it could be the same day. So it's a little bit of when you're there and which day. If it's a day with a lot of ships in harbor, like 2 or 3, if you're unlucky, you will have a lot of tourists on the Golden Circle. But then, like I said, if you move out of the south and the big spots, go into the west, into the north, you will have a lot less people around. You won't have any overcrowding or over tourism, like in the sense that Venice has over tourism or Barcelona. It's not the same thing where you pack like 8 million tourists into a city of like 5 kilometers radius. We have a country that is 103,000 square kilometers, and ours is more of a problem of how to spread them out to all the interesting places around the country, which we've been talking about. And this is one of the reasons that I'm trying to kind of promote the north and the east and the west fjords, because these are both places that we would like more tourists to go to kind of spread them around a little bit more. But we're doing that because they are so beautiful and they are so much just as much worth visiting as the places in the south and the southwest that are better known. But we are going to be having probably around 2.12 million tourists this year, which is a lot for a country of 370,000. But we will manage.
Okay, good luck with that. So when you play tourist, what are 1 or 2 of your favorite places to go in Iceland?
I've traveled more around Iceland than I have abroad, actually. Our family has a very small rural cottage in one of the eastern fjords in Álftafjörður, which is roughly translated Swan Fjord. It's when you drive the south coast, it's the first eastern fjord that you come into. So it's about 70 kilometers from Höfn in Hornafjörður. So and it's just a small house with just solar electricity and water just with a pump from the ground, and it's very much cut off. There's nothing around except just sheep and the fox and some birds, and that's actually my favorite place in the world. But when I play tourists in Iceland, the attractions I like are as I was telling you about Mývatn and the area there in the northeast. That's some of my favorite places there. And I went to play tourist in the Westfjords for 8 days in the summer of 2021. It's the first time I've been there I've been there for work before a lot of times, but it was the first time that just me and my wife went there, stayed at some hotels, just drove around for 8 days, and it's absolutely breathtaking. It's such a different place from a lot that I've seen in Iceland. I know the Eastern Fjords very, very well. The West Fjords are somehow completely different, even though they're very much alike. There are different colors, there are different things to see, different birds. There's one of Iceland's most beautiful waterfalls is there, Dynjandi. So I highly recommend the West Fjords.
All right. Yes, that's, like I said, it's on my bucket list to get there one day. Well, we are all out of questions. And Jóhannes, thank you again. This has just been a marvelous presentation. We learned so much from you. You're just a wealth of information.
Thank you.
And before we go, I just want to remind people that there will be an Icelandic National League convention in Banff, Alberta, May 11th through the 13th. And there's still plenty of time to register for that. There's going to be a very interesting set of programs in a beautiful part of North America. But Jóhannes, thank you again for taking time out of your really busy schedule.
No problem. Thank you.
With us today.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for attending this presentation. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.